In today's story, we dive into a classic relationship crossroads. Our narrator, Caleb, thinks he's found the one in Sarah until he sees the reality of her home life. With two kids running wild and a mom who has completely checked out, Caleb has to decide if love is worth losing his hearing and his mind. Is he a jerk for leaving early, or is he just saving himself from a lifetime of headache? Let's get into the drama. Would you like me to write a follow-up scene where Caleb encounters Sarah and the kids at a grocery store? Caleb sat on the edge of the couch and felt like his head was going to explode into a million tiny pieces. The house was not just loud, it was the kind of loud that makes your teeth hurt and your eyes twitch. It was a Tuesday night, which used to be a chill night for him, but that was before he started dating Sarah. Now, Tuesday nights were part of the new normal where the walls shook and the air smelled like old juice boxes and sweat. Sarah was in the kitchen trying to make dinner, but it looked more like she was fighting a war with a pot of pasta. Liam, who was 10 years old but acted like he was powered by a giant battery that never ran out, was currently using the back of the sofa as a launch pad. He would scream a war cry that sounded like a bird getting stepped on and then jump onto a pile of pillows. His younger brother, Noah, was 6 and had decided that the best way to spend his time was to follow Liam around and copy every single noise he made. If Liam yelled bam, Noah yelled bam, but twice as loud. It was a loop of noise that felt like it was drilling a hole right through Caleb's forehead. Caleb looked over at Sarah. He loved her, or at least he thought he did when they were out on dates and the world was quiet. She was smart and funny, but right now she just looked tired. Her hair was messy, and she had a red sauce stain on her shirt that looked like a map of a tiny, sad country. She wasn't telling the boys to stop. She wasn't even looking at them. She was just stirring the pot like a robot. Caleb wondered if she had some kind of magic earplugs that he didn't know about, or if her brain had just shut down to save itself from the madness. "Hey, guys, maybe we could keep the jumping to a minimum," Caleb said, trying to make his voice sound nice but firm. He didn't want to be the mean guy, but he also didn't want a 10-year-old to land on his head. Liam didn't even look at him. He just did another backflip and kicked a lamp. The lamp didn't break, but it wobbled in a way that made Caleb's heart skip a beat. Noah started laughing so hard he fell over and started kicking his legs against the floor, making a rhythmic thud-thud-thud sound that echoed through the whole room. Caleb looked at his watch. He had been there for exactly 42 minutes. He had originally planned to stay for the whole night, maybe watch a movie after the kids went to bed, but the bedtime part felt like a lie. These kids didn't look like they were ever going to sleep. They looked like they were getting ready for a rave. He felt a bead of sweat drip down his neck. The heat in the house was turned up way too high, and the smell of boiling noodles was starting to make him feel a little bit sick. He stood up slowly, like he was trying not to startle a wild animal. He walked into the kitchen and stood near Sarah. She didn't look up. "Hey," he whispered, even though there was no point in whispering because of the screaming in the next room. "I think I'm gonna head out." Sarah stopped stirring for a second. She looked at him with eyes that were big and sad. "Already? But dinner is almost done. I made the curly pasta you like." Caleb felt a pang of guilt, but then Liam let out a screech that sounded like a car braking too fast. I have a big day tomorrow," Caleb lied. He didn't have a big day. He had a very small day that involved sitting in a quiet office and not being yelled at by children. "I really need to get some sleep, and I think I'm just getting a bit of a headache." Sarah's face changed. It went from sad to kind of hard. She put the spoon down with a wet thwack. "You're leaving because of them, aren't you?" she asked. Her voice was flat. Caleb didn't want to lie again, but he also didn't want to start a fight. "It's just a lot, Sarah. You know I'm not used to this much energy." He tried to use the word energy instead of chaos or total nightmare. He thought it was a good choice, but Sarah didn't seem to think so. She crossed her arms and looked at the floor. "They're just kids, Caleb. This is what having a family looks like. If you can't handle a little noise on a Tuesday, how are we supposed to have a future?" This felt like a trap. Caleb hated traps. He felt like he was playing a video game where he didn't know any of the controls and the boss was way too strong. He looked past her into the living room where Noah was now trying to climb the curtains. Sarah didn't even turn around to see it. "I'm not saying they aren't kids," Caleb said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm just saying I need a break. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" He reached out to touch her arm, but she pulled away. She went back to the pasta and started stirring again, faster this time. "Fine, go, enjoy your quiet apartment," she said. It sounded like a bye, but it felt like a don't come back. Caleb grabbed his jacket and moved toward the door. As he opened the front door, the cool night air hit him like a cold glass of water. It was so quiet outside. He could hear a cricket. He could hear a car way off in the distance. He could hear his own breathing. He walked to his car and sat inside, but he didn't start the engine right away. He just sat there in the dark, feeling the silence. It was the best thing he had ever felt in his entire life, but he also felt like a total jerk. He drove home and kept the radio off. When he got to his apartment, he walked inside and didn't turn on many lights. He sat on his couch, the couch that didn't have anyone jumping off of it, and stared at the wall. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Sarah. It was long. He didn't want to read it, but he knew he had to. He sighed and tapped the screen. The text was full of words like disappointed and commitment. Sarah told him that she felt like he was rejecting her kids, and by rejecting them, he was rejecting her. She said she felt alone in the mess and that he was supposed to be her partner. Caleb felt bad, but he also felt frustrated. He wasn't their dad. He had only been dating her for 6 months. Was he really supposed to just dive into the fire and stay there until he burned up? He started typing a reply, then deleted it. Then he started again. He wanted to explain that there is a difference between family life and letting kids run wild, but he knew that wouldn't go over well. Parents were sensitive about that kind of stuff. He knew Sarah was stressed, but he also felt like she was letting the kids rule the house because she was too tired to fight them. That didn't seem fair to him either. The next morning, the sun came up and Caleb still felt like he was in trouble. He went to work and did his job, but the drama was like a heavy backpack he couldn't take off. His friend Mark noticed he was acting weird during lunch. Mark was the kind of guy who always had an opinion on everything, usually involving sports or why thin crust pizza is better than deep dish. "You look like you saw a ghost," Mark said, biting into a sandwich. Caleb told him the whole story. He told him about the jumping, the screaming, the pasta, and the future talk. Mark listened and nodded. "Dude," Mark said after he swallowed, "run. If she's letting them act like that now, imagine what it's like when they're teenagers. You'll be living in a cage while they burn the house down for fun." Caleb laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. "Mark, she's a great person. The kids are just a lot. I think she's just overwhelmed." Mark shook his head. "Being overwhelmed is one thing. Expecting you to just sit there and take it like a statue is another. You're a boyfriend, not a human shield. You have to set some boundaries or you're gonna lose your mind." That word, boundaries, stuck in Caleb's head for the rest of the day. He realized he hadn't said any. He had just been trying to be the cool boyfriend who went with the flow. But the flow was a waterfall and he was currently falling off the edge. He decided he needed to talk to Sarah in person, somewhere quiet. No kids, no jumping, no pasta. He called her and asked if they could grab coffee while her mom watched the boys. Sarah sounded hesitant, but she agreed. They met at a small shop downtown. Sarah looked like she had slept for maybe 20 minutes. She had dark circles under her eyes and she kept checking her phone. Caleb felt that familiar wave of pity, but he pushed it down. He had to say what he needed to say. "I'm sorry I left like that," Caleb started. Sarah nodded but didn't say anything. "But I need you to understand that I can't be in that environment all the time. It's not that I don't like the boys, it's that there are no rules. It's hard for me to be there when everything is so chaotic." He waited for her to get mad, but she just looked tired. "I don't have the energy for rules, Caleb," she whispered. "I work all day, I pick them up, I cook, I clean. By the time you get there, I'm just trying to make it to bedtime. I need help, not a judge." Caleb realized then that they were looking at the same problem from two totally different sides. She saw a helper, he saw a girlfriend. She saw a crisis, he saw a Tuesday night. He looked at his coffee and realized that maybe Mark was right, even if he was a bit of a jerk about it. If this was the future Sarah was talking about, Caleb wasn't sure he was the right person for the job. He liked quiet. He liked books. He liked knowing that his lamps wouldn't be kicked over by a 10-year-old. He looked at Sarah and felt a deep sadness because he realized that loving someone isn't always enough to make two different lives fit together. "I don't think I can be the person who fixes this for you," Caleb said softly. The words felt heavy in his mouth. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and for a second, he almost took it back. He almost said he'd go back and let Liam jump on him forever. But then he remembered the peace of his quiet apartment, and he knew he couldn't go back to the noise.